Hello again, and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes this week, everyone. I am still Chris Gazdick. He is Craig Graves. I'm a mental health therapist and substance abuse therapist. I have a book available soon, Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. Craig has available now his Unbeatable Mind Coaching Assistance for you. We welcome you to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast. See the world through the lens of a therapist and a coach. Being aware this is not delivery of therapy services in any way. Check out our website, throughatherapist'seyes.com. You can get full show transcriptions there. You are what makes us grow. Put us on automatic downloads that help us be a better business, more accessible, so that we get this thing out. We want you to help us grow. Please, you do make it go. Craig, this is the human emotional experience. I propose we figure this thing out together. What says you?
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. So I don't know, man. We spent a little bit of time last week on some current events. This show and last show is really designed, in my mind, to help us all with all the things that are going on in our world today. We listed out a bunch of mental health strategies last week, and today we're going to talk about burnout, and really you can kind of use last show with this show as a good combination to really deal with something that you feel is overwhelming you, like the world seems to be overwhelming us, Craig, you know?
It does. It really does.
It just doesn't stop. And I know people went through this in 1918, and little known fact, but that didn't go away very quick back then neither. People like to think, oh, yeah, it was a tough year. No, that was a tough 3 years, because that thing came back with a fury when it went away, and it was similar to what we're experiencing now. You know, people forget history. They really just live consumed in the moment, feeling burnt out, if you will, and forget what things really were. And we minimize it. We simply forget facts about it. We glorify things that we went through. I mean, even with politics, man, there were people killing each other about politics back in the beginning. You know, gunshots and stuff against president on president.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again today.
You know,
in the current state we're in.
It generally
I would not be shocked at all.
Generally, things are not as bad when they seem bad, and they're not as good when they seem good. I like the tried and true simple thoughts, and that's one that I'll offer, you know, for anyone listening to this issue of burnout in this show, and anybody that's feeling burnt out and stressed out there. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of us. You know, we tend to forget, we tend to get in the moment when things are rough. And people, I find, do have a struggle in staying power, staying the course. I love, you know, my favorite life quote now. You remember? Mr. Winston Churchill.
Oh, you go through hell, keep going.
That's right. I love it. You know that, and I'm learning a little bit about the English culture in some ways right now, and they have a really cool, just pull your bootstraps up, man, let's go. And they were a big part of winning that war because of that, as a cultural component of the way they operate. I don't know if you know that. That was a reflection. Winston Churchill was a reflection in a regard to their culture, which usually, truth is, everyone out there all worked up about the conventions and the political season this year. It is a reflection of us and how we are as a people. And part of this show is blowing up stereotypes and myths, and I'm on the theme a little bit and adding to the show of being helpful, you know, so that we really can come together, grow as a people, and grow together. And I mean what I say, let's figure this thing out together.
So expand on that. When you say it's a reflection of us, what do you mean by that?
You know, when we're divided in our Congress, we're divided in our peoples. When we're stuck in our spots and don't get things done in our government, I would submit we're stuck as ourselves individually and as a people. When we are argumentative and angry in the seats of Congress and from the White House itself, we are generally probably angry and loud as a people. I think there's a lot of parallels with the media and with our government. That's just true thoughts from whatever it's worth in the moment, to be honest with you.
Yeah, media and government for sure. I think, but most people I know just want to live their lives and do some stuff they want to do and be economically okay and have their children be good. And
A lot of angry people out there.
well, there are, but I think the anger may be flowing down instead of up. It sounds to me like you're saying it's flowing up.
Yeah, I think so. I do.
I disagree. I think it's flowing down. I think that the political situation and the news media situation, I think that all boils down to dividing the people.
Media sells what we want to hear.
But it's sensationalism in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
No doubt.
I mean, some of the headlines that you click through to some of the headlines. We talked about doing a news fast last time. And hopefully everybody who heard that's in the middle of that right now.
In the middle. You're in the middle. Keep going, everybody. Keep going.
Hopefully we're all in the middle of that. But, I think that, some of the headlines are just attention getters. And when you click through to the story, there's a different story than the headline, and I just think it flows down, man.
It's an interesting back and forth there a little bit. And like I said, that was just genuinely me in the moment, to be honest with you. That is not pre-thought or thought out, but I think there's a lot of reflection as well. Well, let's move on. I don't know. Did we ready to move on? Let's get
I think it's relevant because talking about burnout, I'm burned out on this situation. I'm burned out on the political situation. I want my government to work. I'm burned out on all of the protesting and rioting and burning down cities and
enough executive orders.
Yeah, it leads to burnout. I'm just burned out on all that stuff.
What is burnout? I want to start out. We haven't done this. Like I said, man, we've had a lot of guests, and we got guests coming up. I guess that's part of the, the progression of a show like we do. You start getting known, and people start searching us out, Craig, and want to be on, and that's kind of a cool development. But it's kind of cool to kick it back with you, man. 2 weeks in a row, just kicking it with you, and kicking these things back and forth. I told you last show, I enjoyed that, and I've been missing that a little bit. So it's pretty neat. Well, I was thinking about this driving over on the way before the mics come on, just trying to get some groundedness because I had a stressful day today. We call it in-service training. We call it, continuing education. I think you come from a more of a business world sector, and I'm curious if you've had many trainings on this, what you call them, and really what you have gleaned, not as much from your coaching stuff, if you can separate the two, more from your just, business mind and really specifically your business trainings and whatnot. Hey, have you heard much of this throughout your career? And what is burnout?
Excuse me. I haven't heard much about burnout from organizations that I've been a part of, apart from people who are burned out. Because a lot of companies they're cutting back, they're cutting staff, but there's still that same amount of work. So a lot of the people that work in larger companies who are going through these kind of processes get tasked with more and more stuff to do. So you have people working 50, 60 hours a week. They burn out. But I don't have much experience with seeing organizations come in and say, here's what to do if you're burned out.
That's surprising to me. No professional development, no team building, those types of things where they bring people.
Not around the topic of burnout, no.
Wow. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. It is unfortunate, but it's just not my experience. And there may be others out there who disagree with that or have a different experience, but that's just what.
Well, maybe not, because I think. See, it's part of why I like you on this show and why we have it set up the way that we do, because, I mean, in my therapy world, we call it compassion fatigue is the most recent phrase that, a lot of therapists out there will go to trainings on, because you have to take care of yourself as a therapist. If you don't, you're not really good for, a lot of other people. So that really applies in banking and in energy department sectors and and all of that kind of stuff. is we have EAPs, employee assistance programs, and yeah, you would think that, good leadership is going to care about their employees to engage them on that level.
I think that the employee assistance programs, the EAP, those kind of things, they're available. And I think that they're probably mentioned, but not in the context of burnout. Or you having family issues, or you got something else going on. But hey, man, you look burned out. Take a few days off.
Wow, right?
Take advantage of the EAP. You're working 60 hours a week.
Right.
Take a break. Nah, I'm not hearing much of that.
No. I have begotten to know through my publishing company, Mr. Tom Duda. He's followed us. Man, thank you, sir. For he was one of the people, as you were as well, to endorse my writing project. And dude, we're going to have him hopefully on the show to talk about his TEDx talk that he did, man. And he talked about it from a corporate perspective.
Burnout.
Oh,
okay.
Mental health.
Oh, I'm interested to hear that. I have to go watch that TED talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. He likes to say he's living the stigma, and he was a big CEO, and he had to take that into his life, or he was going to be done for in a lot of ways. And I don't want to give too much away, but that's one of the things coming up, in the future for us, because he talks about it from a CEO perspective, and it's a very powerful TEDx talk. So what is burnout? I like to start out with definitions for a reason. We oftentimes do that. My sense of burnout and what I came up with, just thinking off the top of my head, is when we begin to feel overwhelmed with tasks needing tended to. Simple and put as that. Google likes to say it is in a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. I interestingly saw 5 stages, says Google, honeymoon phase. When we undertake a new task, we often start by experiencing high job satisfaction and commitment and energy and creativity, but then the onset of stress, and then chronic stress, and then burnout, and then habitual burnout.
What do you think? What is the definition of chronic stress?
I think that's your 60-hour work week. I think that's, having home life balance out of whack. I think that's not taking care of yourself. I think that's a lack of self-care. I think that's trying to take care of others before you take care of yourself. I think that's, that's a pretty good list that just comes to my mind on the spot.
Okay, that's good. And habitual burnout versus just burnout. What are you going there?
Chronic stress leads to burning out, and habitual burnout, to me, that's bad. That's really bad. When you're chronically and habitually in a state where you get to the point, honestly, where you can't function. You really get to a point where you're a mom and you're depressed and you're not doing parenting. You're in a bad state. You're a guy who gets agoraphobic and isn't able to work. You take disability leaves. We're going to talk about that today. It's habitual. So that's bad.
Yeah, so habitual burnout probably leads to other diagnosable kind of anxiety, depression.
Actually, I believe in reverse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe actually in reverse.
So you believe that you experience the other things first and then habitual burnout?
I think the other experience that somebody might be having as a mental health factor is on top of the job-related stress. Actually, Craig, if you remember, I talked about the tale of 2 tapes.
Yeah.
An overview of mental health.
Yeah.
I think it's a crucial thing, and it comes up in my therapy office all the time. On the right side here is biological factors, and that's the genetics, that's the anxiety, that's the brain, that's the exercise, the nutrition. The biological realities drive how we feel, but on the left side we have social and emotional pressures, stresses and strains. We have daily stress and grind. We have primary relationships and primary life experiences. This biological and social and emotional totally blend together to create what we're experiencing. So if you don't have much of the biological side, a lot of people don't, but you might have a lot of the social and emotional side, and you can actually get burnt out then. Kind of hard to get to habitual burnout, I might say. But boy, when you're already got biological stuff going on, as genetic realities are a big part of mental health, and you got a lot on this other side, man, that's a heck of a combo. It really is a heck of a combo.
Interesting. But, I see it working maybe both ways then, Chris, because I really see the habitual burnout leading to those things. Right?
Probably so.
Because, I'm happy. I got this great job, man. I'm doing good. Oh, good grief. I'm working 60 hours a week. I don't see my kids, This really stinks. I'm working on Saturdays. Oh, golly. It's just a chronic stress. Then it's like, oh, man, this is just terrible. And then the depression, anxiety set in after, you're on this high of having this new gig, and then you just kind of led down this path to...
getting out of balance for one reason or the other, you're probably right.
Yeah.
For one reason or the other, it goes one direction and then the other. And boy, I think my big point there is when they're both really clipping, eek. Yeah. That's a rough spot.
This is good that we've done these two shows together. You were right, because this last show, if you guys didn't hear it, a lot of the tools we talked about you could use to combat this burnout. I'm sure you're heading that way at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I'll hold off.
No, go ahead, actually.
Well, that was really all I had to say. But a lot of the tools we talked, breathing and visualization and journaling and exercise, and if you're eating healthy, hopefully it is going to kind of get you out of this burnout mode or prevent you from getting there in the first place.
Right, and I'm going to list out some things that are actually more specific to burnout that I think are helpful in the end. And the short is, take the list from last week and apply it to this. And I got other things that are specific to burnout that I brainstormed. So, how does this happen? We were just talking about that a little bit. And I mentioned that, mental health factors are a big factor. And we're gonna do a little segment on that for sure in a bit. But, it is easy to say, oh yeah, you know what? A lack of self-care. Okay, that is a big factor. No doubt about it. If you're not taking breaks, if you're not distancing yourself from the stress around you, it's the cornerstone of mental health, in my view, for a really important reason. But on a closer look, you know what? Sometimes that other side of the tale of two tapes, life hits.
It does.
And it can hit hard, depending upon what your circumstances might be. You might get a cancer diagnosis. Okay, you might get a spouse that just up and leaves, or you found out, about the Donaldsons did recently, some dramatic new news about your partner.
Yeah. There could be a pandemic. You're working from home and homeschooling your kids at the same time.
Right? It's hitting hard now.
Yeah.
We are getting hit hard as a people.
Right.
And so when all that social and emotional stress is buzzing, that's not really a lack of self-care. That's just life. And honestly, man, I'm not so sure that I can say generally people do a good job at handling their emotions. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Is it?
Just scroll through your Facebook feed. I'm sure you'll see some emotions on there.
We don't handle it well. Excuse me. When things get tough, do the tough get going? We like to think. Well, America's handled tough times in the past, and we'll do so now. Well, we will, and we have, and that is a true statement. And I have faith. I've said that on the show before. Things generally aren't as bad when they're bad, and generally not as good when they're good. But I'm not so sure that we've got this thing licked insofar as handling our internal insecurities, our internal sense of fear, our internal sense of doubt, our internal sense of shame, our internal emotions, man. I think we kind of suck at it. I think that's something that, I'm kind of steering ourselves a little bit, Craig. I've mentioned it before. I want to be helpful with that. So on we go with being helpful towards that. This is a brand new thought that I have, and I'm excited about it in so far as adding to a therapy theme that I've often thought about. So I like to take a teaching mode, Craig, right? Like I like to get into things and understand them. I love the use of metaphors. I think that understanding ourselves is a big piece. All therapists out there, all therapists, I think, need to understand taking teaching role is a really important part of what we do. Super important. I start out a lot of times with that. And so when I'm kind of helping people understand depression, right? We did a show on depression, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I probably said it on there, but I didn't say this new thought on there. What I said on there was grief and loss if you think about it, is a very, very good way to understand when somebody's in a state of depression. Because all of the things really overlap a lot. Now, you've had people die in life and things that you've lost and stuff, right? I mean, what are some of the things you experience when you're grieving?
Sadness.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe despair.
Right?
Lack of hope, maybe sometimes,
Absolutely.
People could experience that. Just a bad feeling of emptiness.
Empty, inability to sleep.
That could be one of the things.
Weeping.
Yeah.
Right? How's your appetite?
Yeah. It sometimes goes away.
You just can't eat when your dog dies.
Yeah.
That is depression. I mean, every one of those things that you listed, interestingly, maybe not as much despair, but that's redundant with feeling, sad. That's depression.
Mm.
Well, you know what occurred to me literally? I met somebody new, and that's what triggered this thought. I actually told him, I'm going to do a show on that, man. And so I'm following up with my word buddy out there. And burnout is the same as grief with the symptoms of depression.
Burnout is the same as grief with symptoms of depression.
Yep. Right? If you are trying to understand burnout and you don't really know what to look for and you don't really have a sense of depression, you can look towards when you have gone through grief and loss. That's what you look for when you're assessing, am I burning out? If you understand depression, but you haven't gone through a lot of losses, you can understand what somebody's going through when they share a loss with you and when they say they're burnt out. I think a lot of times people are not used to looking at inside themselves. Am I burned out? Well, you know what? Do you feel like you just had a grief experience? Are you losing sleep? Are you feeling hopeless? Are you feeling helpless? Do you feel stuck and in a rut? These are specific things we look for with depression. Do you even feel tearful and weepy? Is your energy gone? Is your interests not seeming interesting? But when you get burnt out, dude, you don't want to continue on.
So is burnout like a diagnosable thing?
No.
It's not in the manual?
No, not really. Ironically, neither is grief.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. We have a concept of complicated grief, and that is when some sort of time frame rolls along. People kind of suggest, well, you want to go through this in a certain time frame. I mean, and if you're still grieving some loss 5 years later, yeah, but there's no real time frame with depression or with grief rather.
Right.
Right.
So if I come into your office and I'm experiencing all these symptoms and you nail it down to burnout, I mean, what do you do? Do you talk about the things we talked about last time? How do you help somebody through that burnout process?
Essentially, yeah. We there's a lot that we get into doing. We look at the big biological factors are the things that we need to get into there. We look at the life experiences. We look at what other life stresses are going on, because you might be thinking you're burnt out with your job, but you know what? You're managing elderly parents and they're really stressing you out by going over there every day being a full-time caretaker. That's a life event.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's multiple things that's going on individually which by the way, if you are feeling a lot of questions, coaching is a great way to go too. It really is. But get that's a reason to get help. It really is a reason to reach out, because you can really get stuck in this stuff. And it's nasty if you get to the habitual burnout stuff. Like I said before, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
So somebody comes in, you talk about some stuff. They're 50 hours a week. They got elderly parents. They got little kids. They're parenting, but you don't see it as anxiety or depression or anything like that. So as a therapist, do you just work through some things that they can do in their life to kind of maybe alleviate some of that stuff and get back to a self-care situation? What do you?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. The cornerstone is a good start. You look at what are you doing with your emotions, how are you managing it. I think as we talk about, towards the end here, more, solutions and how do you get out of this. And a lot of last show's stuff is absolutely effective. But the challenge here, though, by the way, I don't even know if I made this clear on last episode. Those are strategies. Those are skills. Craig, what do you think has to happen with a set of skills?
Well, you got to use them.
And what happens when you use them, right?
Hopefully they work and you get better.
You get better. Do you sit down and become an excellent journaler the first time that you use those skills?
Oh, no,
right?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
You don't know what
it
you're
takes
doing.
Time. And that's
You're
why
like,
I said, yeah.
This sucks. This isn't helpful. This isn't effective. And I think I lose people sometimes in therapy when I don't help them see that point.
Yeah.
You're not going to listen to visualization skills and say, hey, I got it. That was helpful. But the first time you try to do visualization, your monkey brain, if you will, as you talk about, it's going to be bouncing all around. You're not even going to get with the visualization. You're not going to be able to understand what you see. It's like you're going to be distracted. You're not going to be mindful.
Same thing with breathing. That's why I said don't start out with 20 minutes. Because if you're just starting out and you sit down for 20 minutes, you're going to quit immediately.
Yeah.
You might just do one session and be done.
Yeah.
Start small and realize that they are skills that have to be practiced.
And when you get good at skills, that's why that was a little bit of a new thought. Again, I propose, can we say, just choose one of these and do it for a few months? What did you say? It takes how many times to do something before it becomes a habit?
21 times.
Right.
What I'm hearing. Yeah. And I'd
start
with the breathing practice, man. That does wonders. I mean,
do something 21 times, any one of these things, you're going to be much better off.
Mm-hmm.
You really are going to be much more proficient at managing internal emotions and burnout, for sure. Yeah, I alluded to this, mental health playing into this. Let's needle into that for a second. I mentioned it with the Tale of Two Tapes. And I think this is a lot of unfortunate stuck spots that people get into. We did a show on that before too, right?
Yep.
Stuck spots.
We did.
How do you get out of them? We talked about that there. Well, you can get stuck if you have mental health things going on and don't know it. And I find that happening all the time. And it's unfortunate. It frustrates me because if people can kind of know what's going on, and it's getting so much better in our society, people are giving mental health their due and paying attention to it and doing something about it a whole lot more than we used to. But, we've talked about anxiety as a big one, right? I don't know how much you remember about, the volcano metaphor and the different types of anxiety we got out there, how anxiety really works. I mean, you remember any of that?
I don't, Chris.
Really?
I'm trying to think of this volcano metaphor, and I can't think of what you...
Got a blank?
Yeah.
Okay, well, real quick, you got the different layers of the earth. Remember, you got topsoil, rock, groundwater.
Yeah.
You think of molten rock lava.
Yeah.
That represents anxiety.
Yeah, I get it.
And the types of anxiety that we have blow out in volcanoes around the world.
So you're saying eventually it just
right
blows out.
Right. So you usually have one major active volcano, but it's a funny thing with anxiety. You'll have a light eruption or smoke in another one or the third one. But because it all comes from the same source, essentially. That's the metaphor. And the different types of anxiety that we have, the different types of volcanoes, if you will. OCD, generalized anxiety disorder, phobias, specific phobias, social phobia, fear of, social environments and people and avoiding places. OCD, did I say that one? A panic disorder where you have panic attacks. Separation anxiety, a lot of times with kids, but in adolescents and young adulthood too. Freaking out when you're not connected to loved ones or close relationships. There's these different types of anxieties, but when you have one, you generally have a little bit of another one. So that's the brief on that. But think about it. I mean, if you've got generalized anxiety disorder, for instance, you worry, you make mountains out of molehills. Well, if that's a general biological brain-oriented thing that's going on, how is that going to impact the way you feel burnout? Definition. Feeling overwhelmed with tasks that need tended to go with my simple definition.
Yeah, it can be much worse.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're already geared like neurologically, biologically, in your thought process with elevated hormones and chemicals in your brain that trigger, intense frustrations and worry, well, golly, man, yeah, you're going to be overwhelmed pretty easily.
Yeah.
Depression, when your brain is not producing very well the chemical serotonin or the neurotransmitter in your body, and you feel all those lists of symptoms that we listed a little bit ago, like you're going to feel pretty overwhelmed. You're not going to handle regular stress and difficult relationships well. So I think that mental health is a big, big piece of what's going on. Along these lines, you remember codependency at all as another example? Remember anything about codependency?
Maybe a little.
Yeah?
Yeah, refresh my brain where you're going with that.
Codependency is just sort of another, mental health characteristic where, you tend to very much take care of other people before you take care of yourself.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If the other person is well, then I am well. Mm-hmm. So my goal is to make the other person well so that I am well. Mm-hmm. That's actually a chapter in my book. Right? It's a big issue. When you're codependent and you have those tendencies, dude, you're trying to do something that's impossible, right? You realize that, right?
Yes.
Making someone else well.
Yeah, you can't change somebody else, folks.
You can try.
You can try.
People live a life trying.
You probably get habitual burnout if you try that.
That's exactly it. It really is. It really is. So, interestingly, I talk a lot about abandonment and engulfment, Other mental health tendencies such that we see in a struggling marriage. That's a big mental health factor. It's, in fact, one of the bigger ones. Engulfment does tend to, fall into traps of taking other people's first because they want to make peace. They don't want any conflicts. Mm-hmm. They don't want any problems. So they're not going to speak out. They're not going to speak up. They tend to just be internalized, right? And I'm going to tell you what do you think happens when you try to make peace at all costs?
You eventually get burned out.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's a quote. It might be in my book somewhere. If it's not, probably needs to be. Peace at all costs is no peace at all.
Right. You're just bottling stuff up, right? And eventually it's going to be a volcano.
It can turn into anxiety. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Abandonment people, believing that false belief that others don't appreciate you or don't care about you, they devalue you, they're going to leave you. These are all lies, but abandonment people fall very much into it. Well, if you're working so hard, whether you realize it or not, to make people happy with you so they don't leave you, where do you think that's going to lead?
Yeah.
It's going to wear you out.
It is. It's going to be very taxing.
So, with these issues we see in marriage and these behavior patterns with, depression and anxiety and, other mental health factors, an idea like codependency, have I made a case that mental health can absolutely lead you to chronic, horrifying, terrifying, habitual burnout. It's a big risk factor. I would argue the people with a mental health biological reality are going to burn out, 10 times easier when they're faced with stress. So that might be a little tip. I mean, if you're looking at different stages of your life and you realize, like, man, I really sunk at that point in my life, and then at that point in my life I also did, and at that point in life I also did. Like, why is this dogging me? I'm feeling that way for the fourth period in my life. You know what? You may have missed a mental health component. Because a lot of people do. They just live with it. Mm-hmm. When they constantly get to that place, whoa, there's probably something there. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of fresh in the moment, in the way that I'm thinking about this. So let's kind of spend a little bit of time on another big factor, Craig, that I think, and I dodged it a little bit last show, and we're coming back to it. Do you remember when you asked me, talk about that, Chris, when you said, go a little more on the 1, 5, and 10-year plan? You were kind of like, I want to hear more about what a purpose does for you, right? You remember that? Mm-hmm. What do you know about, what's his name? Rick Warren.
Rick Warren.
I think he's
a pastor.
Yeah, Pastor Rick Warren.
He's famous for the purpose-driven books, purpose-driven life. I think he had some other purpose-driven theme books, if you will.
Did he?
Purpose-driven marriage or something like that. I think he did.
Interesting.
I could be wrong there, but maybe it was just purpose-driven life.
That was the big hit that he had.
That was the big one. Yeah, that was definitely the big one.
And what do you know about the purpose-driven life? Did you ever?
I've read a ton of self-help books, but that's not one of them.
Really?
Yeah, I've never read that one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was big.
I don't know much about that.
Okay. Well, just think about your thoughts on your own about purpose. And I want to just go through what I did was, there's an Amazon link, because it's a big book. It's a cool book. I haven't read it either, I will be honest. But I've heard a lot about it. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So in a sense, I feel like, I have a sense of...
You've got the Cliff Notes, right?
I got the Cliff Notes. Yeah, exactly. Which I do a lot. I'm a listener. By the way, I learn a lot by listening to people. I always learned that in school, man. I was locked on. to whatever the professor was talking. Lectures were a big deal to me. Like I'm right there because I don't learn greatly by reading. You got to know yourself and how you progress and reading is just, I don't know. I'm not wired that way. I'm just not. So that's why I love conferences because I learn there as much as I
complain about them.
I did in the beginning of this show, and I don't do that no more because
I've kind of shifted a bit on the conference deal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
getting ready to go to a big one here in a few weeks. We'll get a lot from that, I'm sure. So this is just their description. So I'm going to read through this actually real quick. This is their description of what it is, and I want you to think about, Craig, and give me some back and forth on. Let's stay here for a little bit. This segment. What does a purpose do for you? Okay, because it's really important. So in a purpose-driven life, you'll find answers to three of life's most important questions. The questions of existence, why am I alive? The question of significance, does my life matter? The question of purpose, what am I on earth? Why am I even here? So living out the purpose you were created for moves you beyond survival or success to a life of significance, the life you were meant to live. Okay? You'll discover the 5 benefits of knowing your purpose. It'll explain the meaning of your life. It'll simplify your life. It'll focus your life. It will increase your motivation. It will prepare you for eternity. That's a big statement, right? That's kind of the description they give of what he's trying to do. And so let's dissect that for a minute because that was a big, fancy, big hitter. A lot of people loved this material. So what do you think about what does having a purpose do in preventing us from staying in or even entering into various stages and states of burnout? Having a purpose.
So you want me to tie that to burnout?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure I can tie it to burnout, man, but I think that having a purpose really gives us a reason or a meaning to our lives. If we're just here floating through, then that kind of leads me to a state of hopelessness or despair, if you will. Why am I here? What is my purpose? And my experience is a lot of people have never thought about that. What is my purpose? And it might...
Or don't focus on it as a focus point.
They don't focus on it as a focus point, or have never even thought about it. I was just having a conversation today with a lady that's also an unbeatable mind coach, and she has taken this thing we use called the 3 Ps in one thing. What's your passion, purpose, and principles? And then
we got sounds. That's all right.
And most of the folks in her group that she's introduced this concept to had never thought about this.
Interesting.
They don't know. They've never even had these thoughts. So, I mean, as a listener, have you ever thought about what your purpose is in life? And I'm thinking a lot of folks are going to say no, they haven't thought about that.
Yeah, that's a shame, and it's unfortunate because it's an important part of getting through tough times. It's I don't know. I think go ahead if you had more.
I didn't really have more, but I think that having a purpose gives us a reason to be here. And some people look for this grand, big purpose.
Yeah.
This deep meaning thing. But your purpose may be, and it could change throughout life. I mean, if you have children, then your purpose could be to raise those children into adulthood. And then when they become adults, then your purpose would change to something else. So purposes could vary, but they kind of give us a meaning and a reason for our existence, if you will. And I think that there's some comfort in that. Maybe you as a therapist can agree or disagree, but I think it gives us something to strive for. We're not just floating through, if you will.
Think about it this way. This is something I think I said on last show, actually. Did I talk about last show on the mics about a long-term perspective? Yeah, it was during the 1, 5, and 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I feel like a lot of that is steeped in this stuff. And whether he realized it or not, I think what Pastor Warren tapped into with this is developing the persistence with this long-term perspective. Because a lot of what you just talked about there, Craig, if you will, I feel like having a purpose and understanding your vision and going after a big perspective, when things suck now and I know where I'm trying to go, what I want to be in the big picture. What do you say in coaching? Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't embrace the suck if I'm in the moment only. And by that I mean short-term thinking. This sucks. This is going to result in bad outcomes for me. This is not good. I can't see beyond this suck. That doesn't help you. Now don't get confused. I understand that take one step at a time and be mindful in the moment and just take small steps. I mean, I get all of that because you get a lot of little rewards. I'm talking about why am I doing these little rewards in this tough spot through life?
Yeah, you got to have a why. You definitely have to have a why. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. He wrote a book called The Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm not sure if it was Frankl or was it Nietzsche? I can never pronounce the name.
I have no idea.
The quote is, "You can endure any how if you have a strong enough why."
There you go. I love it.
So you can get through any situation. This guy went through absolute hell on earth, and there was probably some luck and maybe some divine intervention involved too. But his purpose was to get out of this concentration camp and find his wife, who, unbeknownst to him, had already perished, and then finish this book he was working on. He was also a psychotherapist, and he had this work that he wanted to get completed, and that was his why, is to get out of the camp, complete this work that he was going to give to the world. And people who didn't have this purpose, who had nothing to live for,
died.
They died.
Yeah.
They absolutely died.
That's a big time perspective. That's a long-term perspective is what I meant to say. Right? Like that gets you through the suck. I don't want to embrace the suck. I'm struggling with that, as Craig, we've talked, through the last, year and whatnot with your Unbeatable Mind program. It sounds horrible to me.
Yeah, well, I think embracing the suck is really about, being put in a bad situation, knowing you're going to get through it.
Right.
And you're going to be better on the other side of it.
Right.
So I'm going to embrace the suck of this ice bath or these burpees or this tough conversation or, this concentration camp, if you will, because when I get on the other side of that, I've got something to offer. This experience is going to make me better because of it.
Let's take a simple thing like we do in Financial Peace University. I know you know that material well. It applies right there. Well, why would I want to really worry about going through the difficulty of paying down this debt? I get nothing fun. I get a crappy car. I don't really get anything nice. I got crappy clothes. I have to cancel my freaking NFL football package. Why am I going to do that?
Yeah, because it's taking you to a better place. Dave Ramsey says, his big quote is, live like no one else so you can live like no one else.
Right.
And what he means by that is most people aren't budgeting and paying off debt and working these jobs to do that. So you're living like nobody else. But when you get to the other side of that, you're going to have no debt. You can be able to pay cash for whatever you want. You're going to have investments.
It works.
So in the moments where you're eating beans and rice and working 3 jobs, you're embracing that suck to get to the other side.
Right.
So I disagree. I do believe you embrace the suck in the moment.
No, I didn't say. I said I don't like it. I said is I don't like it, meaning it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard if you don't have a long-term perspective, but when you have a longer-term perspective, it's worth it.
I missed that second part, but I do agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's like what I said is I hate the idea when you just think of the simple phrase, embrace the suck, embrace the difficulty. Rejoice in your pain? Like, come on, you hear stuff like that. You're like, no, man, stop preaching to me about pain is good for me. Yeah. I don't want to be trimmed and primed.
Yeah, and I think you do have to have that why. You have to have that long-term perspective of why. Why am I going to do 100 burpees? Burpees suck, right?
I hate burpees.
Because I'm going to lose 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be in better health.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be able to play with my kids.
Because I'm worth it.
And not be out of breath. Yeah. Yeah, so you have to have that long-term vision. in order to take the short-term pain.
You know, I would submit to you, people that worked out at some point in their life, earlier on in life, got out of shape and got lost with it, have a much easier time getting back to it because they've been there before and remember what it feels like to be well, right? And I know where I'm going.
Right.
I'm going back to actually where I was.
That's a very good point.
Somebody that's never experienced that, it's really hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a little bit of time with this segment, and I think we did a good job on the idea of understanding a purpose-driven life, whether he realized it or not, and I bet he did. You know, when you have, good God, think about the faith traditions of our world, right? Whether it's Muslim or Jewish or whatever you want to talk about. If you realize, really, like, I'm going to eternity in a peace state where there is no hurt and pain, I'll put up with this crap. No problem. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a powerful faith-driven reality. And it fits right along with this mental health idea.
Yeah, it is. It does.
You know? So let's go. Where are we at here? Yeah, so we're going to really spend a little bit of time on this next segment as well with, all right, man, so you got this chronic burnout. You got this habitual burnout. Let's just apply it to there, right? How do you get out of it, man? What do you do to avoid this even better? They're the same. How do I avoid it? How do I get out of it? You know, what do we really do? I'm glad that this brainstorm that I had started out with this one because I didn't get a chance to go deeper in on it with the strategy show last week. And this actually comes from something you taught me fairly recently, right? You remember when you were talking about retirement?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I had the same kind of concepts about vacation. And actually, I took what you were talking about with retirement, do that again for our audience, and I'll tell you how I took that in relationship to vacations.
Well, what I said in that conversation was that retirement is a fairly new concept. And, you know, my argument there is, why retire if you still have value to add to the world and to society? Then why would you stop doing whatever it is that you're doing? Why not keep going?
Yep.
You know, why not keep going?
And it was an interesting part of that you talked about. You know, the retirement age was arbitrarily set somewhere around the New Deal, right?
Yeah.
Where we're gonna give you Social Security and we're gonna help you out when you're older and you can't function and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Yeah, retirement. I think started at age 62.
Yeah.
And the average lifespan at that point was 58.
Right.
So you know, the Social Security system was set up such that a lot of folks never lived to get it.
Right.
And now people are living 20, 30 years past. And that's one of the problems with the Social Security system is, you know, people are living way much longer than they did when it was first implemented. Which
has actually helped me to kind of think, you know, raising the Social Security age, I used to be like, yo, man, come on, man, stop it. It makes sense.
It does.
It really does.
It does.
If you think about it that way. What I did is I took that kind of conceptual thinking and I turned that around with vacations. You know, I hear people say, man, I need a vacation from my vacation. Well, you know, you probably let yourself get too burned out before you get on vacation. And then you have all this stress with vacation that you miss the point of vacations. You're supposed to be taking a break, y'all. Right?
Yeah.
I really feel like, and the truth is, I just suck at planning things. Anybody that knows me, I'm kind of more in the moment. Like, don't ask me what I'm doing next weekend. I have no idea. Maybe I'll be available for dinner. Maybe I won't. You want to go golfing later in the week? I don't know. Maybe. Check me out on Friday about Saturday. That's kind of the way I roll. And that sucks for relationships in some way. And I'm sorry to anybody out there who gets annoyed by that knows me. But it is a problem that I try to deal with. So in part, that's probably the bigger reason, but I also really do believe in, like, you know, shorter vacations, if you will. I mean, I love the concept of long weekends or stay vacations. What is it called? Stay home vacation? What is it called?
Staycation.
It is just staycations? Yeah. I mean, that's great, man. Just take a day off. You know, mental health day. That's what it's called, right? Do that every now and again. I don't want to get myself so worn out, so run down, that I feel like, I have to have a vacation. No, man. I don't want to get under the bar, ever. And what I mean is, when I start getting wore out, when I start getting wore down, that tells me, just like it does with thirst, okay? Do you know this? I know you know this because you talk about fluid and water all the time, right? When are you supposed to drink fluids?
Before you're thirsty.
Way before.
Yeah.
If you're thirsty, you done
waited too long.
Way too long.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that. I don't know if you gave me that when I learned that from you or not, but that's what I mean by vacations. Don't get thirsty. Don't let yourself get run down. Take those smaller breaks. I think that's
a great idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a big part of prevention with burnout.
Yeah. And you could take, if you got 3 or 4 weeks of vacation, you could take one of those weeks and just plan out some long weekends here and there. That's a great idea.
Like every month.
I love it.
Every month.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
At least once every 2 months, take a long weekend or.
Because I don't know about you, man. When I go away for a week, I come home, my voicemail's tore up. My email is like overwhelming. My task lists, I've got things I need to do with my company.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I would probably say do some of those little mini vacations in addition to a longer one, maybe with your family. But I like the idea of having the little ones in between there.
Correct, because there is also the idea of a sabbatical, right? Now, I don't know what that's got to be like, but a month or 2 or 3 off those guys go?
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, right? Yeah.
You and I need a sabbatical, Mr. Graves, to go do some slot canyoning.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
To call Janice Booth.
Hell yeah, Miss Booth, yes.
Yeah.
We'll go slot canyoning out there. I mean that. By the way. Reference the very last show for a much longer list, right?
Yeah, we had a long list last time. You want to do a quick review?
It's gonna help you. I don't know. It's somewhere else. Yeah. But it's on there, and it's a lot of the things that you would think of, and that's all gonna help with burnout, no doubt about it. But moving on, right? Sometimes short-term disability. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. Their supervisor will be like, "Hey, Jane, you really had a hard time. You got some. You just got a baby. Maybe you came back too early, or John, you seem like you've lost your zeal for the job. You're not really getting your reports done on time. They're like, I'm really concerned about you." And he's like, "Yeah, I really been having a hard time, to be honest with you, man. My kid's doing this, or my wife's doing that." And the supervisor will say, "Hey, we do have a program. It's called short-term disability." And I tell you what, Craig, a lot of times people I have in therapy that are on short-term disability had no idea what it is.
Really? And their boss recommended it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it happens.
I know people need to use that for various reasons, but I've never heard anybody say, "Hey, you know what? You look like you're burned out."
It happens.
Short-term disability.
Yeah. Well, and anybody who wants to learn a little bit about leading people or having leadership or being a good supervisor, you got to know your people. You got to be in touch with your people.
Oh, I 100% agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's good to say, listen, I want you to be a good employee. I want you to be well too, right? But I want you to be a good employee. And you ain't no good to me if you're like on the floor.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
You're not productive. You're turning out a poor product.
Yeah.
I want you to be well, so selfishly you do well for what I'm trying to gear you towards. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, particularly with the chronic habitual burnout, man, disability is it's a helpful tool. Now, probably a lot of times to maybe I stand corrected a little bit, I definitely have had people, many times I would say, or several times at least, where their boss initiates it. Family care providers do a lot of that too. Your family doctor, yeah, they're going to say, "Hey, I
can see a doctor saying that, but somebody's boss or manager, I'm like, wow, really?
It's happened, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
I haven't heard that.
Job change occurs to me. Really, when you're really burnt out, we have a lot of teachers out there, man, and they're burning out. I hope they don't run away from policing. Also, by the way, boy, they're running out the door, and that sucks. So I don't want to say that, hey, you're stressed out with your job, you don't like what's going on, you don't like the direction, you got a bad review or something, just leave. That is not what I'm talking. I'm not trying to contradict myself with a long-term, persistent attitude perspective on thinking how you're going to be. But I am saying that sometimes it really is, if that's a core problem in your life. A lot of people, Dan Miller does his that's his main gig, right?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Sometimes that is the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do need a job change, You start digging into that purpose we talked about, then you may decide that you're misaligned in your career, and you may decide to go do something different, and that's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all. So a couple of examples. We talk about the unbeatable mind. So, Mark Devine, when he was 24 years old, 25 years old, was a CPA on Wall Street. And he started feeling unaligned, like we're talking about.
Oh, really?
And that's when he joined SEAL teams.
Oh, okay.
And Dan Miller talks about an example of a dentist, who was making $300K a year. This guy's making bank as a dentist, right?
Coin.
But he was so miserable, he was considering suicide. So after meeting with Dan, I think Dan
coached him
through that work. Yeah, he realized that he was not really a dentist, and he ended up with a social worker type job.
Didn't make any money,
making like $30K a year, but he was happy as could be, never happier in his whole life.
Right.
Yeah. So sometimes a job change is the answer.
You wouldn't think of that on an emotional management strategy list, but it can be absolutely something to look for. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a passion. That's another word, passion. I should have had that on this list.
Yeah.
Having passion for what you do, whether it's parenting, whether it's financial planning, whether it's, managing the garbage. What? Yeah. Serving your community. That's passion, man. You come across those people that really care about their job. And I appreciate a plumber who really gives a crap about what he's doing. He is there to help me.
A plumber who gives a crap?
We're going to get crack at
That's
you
pretty
in a
good.
second. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But what I was going to say is really, like, you can tell those people that care about their job. They care about their gift. They care about what they're doing. And then you can tell the people that just don't give a rip to.
Yeah.
I don't want to hire them back. And I've had plenty of those. Self-talk on this list. Vacations, as we talked about. Referencing the long list last show. Short-term disability sometimes is an option. I hope we gave a good understanding on that. Because a lot of people don't even know, really.
I think you did good. And if you don't know, then talk to your HR department about that.
Good point, yeah.
Questions.
Job change sometimes. Self-talk. Listen, if you don't value yourself, you don't speak highly of yourself inside yourself about what you do not expect somebody else to do that. Right?
Right on, yeah.
Why would you expect somebody else to talk highly of you if you don't think highly of yourself? I don't understand that about people. I heard some people at Morgan James Publishing. I'm honored to be in their group, and somebody was talking about on there, like, authors struggle. They're like, oh, it's intimidating to put your thoughts out to the world. I'm not going to lie. The date, March 2021, is a little bit of an intimidating day for me. Like, it's weird.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's weird.
I understand that. You got imposter syndrome, and you got people
critical,
who are trolls and haters. I got a friend who's a great artist, fantastic. This guy's got more talent in his little finger than you and I have combined in our whole bodies. And he posts his art on Instagram. And some troll the other day was out there bashing my friend's work. And I'm like,
stop
there's
it.
some vulnerability
nice.
there.
There is.
Putting yourself out there like that.
You really are. And I tell you, the guy or the people, whoever's having a conversation, was like, authors should be out there screaming, like, hey, I got a good idea. Mm-hmm. Listen to what I'm saying. This is good stuff.
They should be. I agree.
And I said I'm intimidated about March 21st, but I'm also really excited because I think that it might help more than one person. Because there's some really cool concepts in there. I've crafted them over a long period of time in my career, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of good stuff in
there. I can't wait to see it myself. Yeah. It's absolutely cool. So value yourself. I mean, if somebody puts something on you like, hey, dude, your art sucks. No, it doesn't. I know it doesn't. I know that. Right? Self-talk is a huge part of managing burnout. Value what you do. Life planning, we talked about that. I'm not going to, take a long-term perspective. I had it on my list. I forgot. Courage. When there's something going on that's wearing you out, you might have a good idea for your supervisor that might be controversial or puts your idea out there, like we just said about being an author or whatever, in a vulnerable way. We talked about with Miss Janice Booth recently how to build courage. Use that courage and speak. Speak up on it. I think that's a very valuable ability to be able to ward off. If you're feeling rough in this situation, probably chances are your coworker or your colleague or your neighbor, your next door neighbor with a neighborhood battle that's going on, right? Probably somebody else is feeling pretty stressed out about that too.
Yeah, would you say communication goes along with that too?
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be the delivery mechanism, yeah.
So if I am feeling burned out, I need to communicate that to my boss or my therapist or somebody, right?
Express.
To get some help.
Totally should be on my list. It wasn't. You're right.
Yeah.
Express the fact that it's there. So not only do you identify, you do have to tell someone. That's really excellent.
I think it goes along with the courage, though. The courage to speak up and communicate is key.
Pretty similar. Get relationships right. There are a lot of types of relationships that we have out there. And I said it during the betrayal show with Mark and Courtney, who I know are a friend of the show, and they'll listen to this. And I'm so grateful for them being on talking about that, because when your relationships ain't right, man, you struggle. Matter of fact, when you're going through the question of will my marriage continue or will my marriage end, I'm going to submit to you, just chances are you're burnt out. Right there. No other questions.
If you get to that point, you're probably right.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're doubtful whether or not my marriage will continue, and I don't mean like the impulsive thought. I think that's actually a much more common thought than people think it is.
Yeah.
People question whether or not I want to stay married, and those are natural. But I'm talking about, no, like the day has come.
Yeah.
Here we are. Never thought I'd get here.
Right.
When you're there, you're burnt out.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
You're overwhelmed.
Right.
So get your relationships right? Budget with your spouse, job performance and expectations with your boss, parenting strategies with your kids, marriage stability. I wrote in all bold. You see there on the show notes, all bold?
Have friends, man.
It's huge. Don't go through depression alone. Oh, how about this, right? Enemy number one for depression is isolation, quote unquote. Enemy number one for depression is isolation. Well, what did we say that burnout is a lot like? Depression.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're having burnout, honestly, that probably ought to be at the top of my list. I didn't think about that till now.
That was good, though. Would you say enemy number one for depression is isolation?
Yes. Right? That is something I've said hundreds of times, if not thousands. And the fact of the matter is, it's occurring to me in a moment just talking about this, right? Like, okay, if you're burnt out, is that enemy number one for burnout?
That's good, man. I'm going to make some memes with you on there.
Memes? What's a meme?
Some quotes.
Kind of scares me.
Yazdi quotes.
He's going to make me into a meme.
Have friends. We talked about your quote last time. It was what did we say it was?
Forget.
Antidote for loneliness is friendship.
Friendship is the antidote to loneliness,
yes. Friendship is the antidote.
Most importantly, maybe. What is most importantly maybe for preventing or getting out of burnout?
Going back to that cornerstone, man.
That's right. Speak it.
Self-care.
Right. Get the relationship right with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not well with yourself, the doubts and the shame, the points of guilt, the points of insecurities, to thine own self be true, known be true. Oh, I screwed it up. What is it? To thine own self be known.
Be true.
Thank you. What is it again?
To thine own self be true.
Right. That is having a very healthy relationship with yourself. Mm-hmm. Listen, people can withstand a lot of stress. We don't know it. People can do a lot of things that they never thought they can accomplish. If you unleash what you believe you can do, you can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Example, right? I love the example of the mile time. How fast can people now run a mile? Well, for centuries, eons, we've been running the Olympics. And when did we finally get to the point where we can run, a 5-minute mile? I always forget the numbers.
No, a 4-minute
mile. 4-minute mile could not be broken. They would say in 1800, 1700, 1600, when we got all smart in the 1900s, you cannot biologically run a mile under 4 minutes, right?
Yep, doctors said that your heart would explode.
Did they say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was physically impossible for a man to run that fast.
Now you suck if you don't.
Without dying. Yeah.
Now you suck if you don't. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to know yourself. You've got to value what is inside you. And when you get those things right, when you get those things straight, yeah, you can embrace this stuff because you know where you're going. Mm-hmm. It's okay. So you can do it. You know? And a lot of people stressed out there these days. There are a lot of things going on to burn us out. There's a lot of social and emotional pressures. But Craig, I believe we as a nation, I believe you as a person out there listening, you know, I got a friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, and he reminds me from time to time, you can do it. And that's true. What are you thinking, sir? Sum us up, get us out of here. Don't know where we're going next. Got some ideas, but I'm not ready to announce them.
Oh, yeah. When are those guests coming?
We got a lot of them. They're lining up. We'll line them up.
Good. Folks, you can find out more about our show at throughatherapistdies.com. We have a new guy on our team who has made some great updates to our website. You can find entries for each show there on the website. We're trying to transcribe those too, so there'll be transcriptions there. We've got share buttons on the post now, so you can easily share those with your friends on social media. You can also find links to our social media on the website. Chris is giving away the first chapter, I believe it's on fear, of his book if you sign up for our email list. So please go take advantage of that. And I think that covers it, Chris.
Stay well. Have a good week.